Welcome to yet another episode of TowerTales, your ATC Podcast. This is your host Mahesh Sharma, joining you from Hyderabad. Here we bring you the untold stories of veteran air traffic controllers from the Indian Air Force. In each episode, we delve into their experiences, sharing their real stories, challenges, and the critical roles they played in ensuring the safety and security of our skies. Get ready to explore the fascinating world of ATC and honor these radioactive entities of aviation. Our guest for this episode today is from a beautiful place in the hills of North Bengal called Kalimpong. He was commissioned in the IAF in 1975, was a category controller, and known for his excellent expertise in crash firefighting and rescue. He served as a Chief GCA controller and SATCO at a number of Air Force stations in Eastern and Western Air Commands, and later Chief Instructor at the ATC Officers Training Establishment in Air Force Academy between 1993 and 95. He retired voluntarily in 1987 as a Wing Commander, and since then has devoted his time for disaster management and saving the hills from landslides in Darjeeling, Sikkim, Himalayas. His blog, Save the Hills, is read all over the world and has more than 6 lakh hits. He is currently Vice President of Dr. Graham Homes, a charitable trust that provides support and education to underprivileged children. He is an avid photographer and sings and plays guitar in his spare time besides walking and working out. By now, many of you would have guessed whom I am talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Wing Commander Praful Rao. Good afternoon, Praful sir, and welcome to this podcast of TowerTales. It is such a pleasure to welcome you this afternoon on this platform.
My absolute pleasure, Mahesh, and it's great meeting you after so many years. And you've chosen a rather easy and a difficult subject. Easy because we spent so much time of our lives when we were young in our jobs, and then difficult because it's quite some time back and difficult to recall the dates, figures, names, etc. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it is of particular pleasure to me because you have been my SATCO. So if I return to a boss, that means the boss has been good.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah, we were together.
The only thing
paths crossed once upon a time a long time back.
Yes, sir. The only change I see in you, there's hardly any change, but the only change I see in you is you're smiling more now.
I hope so.
You know, behind your back, we used to say that when would Praful sir smile?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good this thing, sir. Let me take you back down the memory lane. Can you tell us what prompted you to join the Air Force, and specifically, did you have a choice to join Air Force as an air traffic controller, or it was fate accompli?
Oh, despite both my parents being in the armed forces, both were doctors in the Second World War in the army, I was absolutely ignorant about where to join and how to join the Air Force. Well, I did just looking up some advertisements which had come in the newspaper, and thereafter I was we were in the Air Force Administrative College in Redfeast, Coimbatore. And thereafter we passed out in 1975, 18th of January, and we somewhere during our training period, we heard, and later on we faced a person who was actually that time Squadron Leader Sharma, if I'm not wrong, who had come to do a voice test for air traffic controllers. But we were selected for the ATC, and without knowing, and I think some of the people were selected for that. I'm not too sure about the fighter control or not. But certainly, yes, we did to get into the ATC, and then thereafter we landed up in Akimpet in 1975 itself. And we were in the ATC school. Akimpet was the place where the ATC school was. I remember that time the boss of I don't know whether he was called the CIO, he was Wing Commander Ranveer Singh. Then we had stalwart Squadron Leader Shukla And I don't know how I recollected the station commander of Hakimput was Group Captain Bakshi. Well, we went through the ATC course, and after that we were posted out. My first posting was 28 Wing Indian. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So I was posted to Indian, which at that point of time had 3 squadrons of 2 NAT squadrons, 29 and 23 squadron, and 20 squadron, which is a hunter squadron. So we did have 3 squadrons. At times there used to be quite a lot of flying, but many times the visibility problem was there at Indian.
All right. So, so what was the typical, day for you when you joined as a young pilot officer? Of course, I had undergone the training of ATCO by then, but what was the day like for you? What were can you recollect some of the initial days and the feelings you had?
Yeah, in fact, when I landed up in Indian, I was under some pretty big names in ATC. There was squadron leader CP Nadhani, was a big shot. It was really great to be doing that job, and I was, well, as a young officer, I was very, very keen on learning. Of course, those are the days where everything was very, very rudimentary in terms of equipment and everything.
So, any fond memories of those first few days when you wore the headset and you handled the mic? Anything that you can recollect?
Oh yeah, every day. To jump a little further into your question, I think those days we were all, doing quite some extraordinary things, because there was nothing in terms of equipment that we could really think. I mean, considering the situation now, we had such rudimentary equipment, and the flying was quite a bit, by the way, in many of the stations where even in Hindon, when the visibility was okay, I mean, 12 to 15 aircraft being in the air was quite normal. And, with the type of equipment that we had and everything, and our job, as you know, Mahesh, was a job where we could make no errors. It was a no error job which we were in, because any error means that somebody would die. So to that extent, I think we all air traffic controllers had to be serious about our job. We couldn't sham, definitely not.
So you have mentioned a couple of times. Yes, you have a couple of times you have mentioned that the equipment those days was such. Can you throw a little more light on the kind of equipment you handled,
Yeah,
and
of course,
the limitations especially the limitation of the equipment?
Well, there was a radar in Indian, as far as I know, but we never went close to it. All these senior guys used to be there, but then otherwise we only had that 8210C. That 8210C was a horrible type of equipment which just gave you the homing of anything, and that too with some error. So all we could do was give a homing to a person who was there, and perhaps ensure procedural separation. That was there, but everything, I think, the computer was your brain those days, right? So everything was inside your brain, and you had these strips that you used, right? I think, but that was the way we used to do it, and it was mainly the human brain which was so magical those days that we all used to control aircraft only through that, and just on memory, on these strips, and very primitive type of working things. So I thought we were pretty much, looking back, I think we were pretty much good those days. I mean, all of us, not.
Since you mentioned since you mentioned 8210C, I'm sure a lot of young ATCOs who would be listening to this podcast hopefully would not know what 8210C is. I recollect because so kindly describe it in your own words.
As far as I remember, it was just a round dial like that with one needle, and the needle would point to some direction where the aircraft was. You could either turn it to. Again, now thank you for getting me back to this. But there was some setting called QT and QDM, something like that.
Yeah.
You could switch it on, and you could get a homing or a bearing on that thing. And we were all hooked to doing what was called a QGH those days.
Mhm.
And that was again a very primitive way of getting aircraft back to the base. And of course, there was no I don't know what the minima was called those days, but break-off altitude, I think that was what it was. Later on, it became decision night. I don't know what it is now. In the aircraft, and of course, we used to have different types of QGHs. Remember, the US compass used to be the most difficult, and then the speechless QGH, which were I mean, all these things were the pet Darcy, exam things where, all of us used to be flummoxed or flabbergasted or do it well. So
Yeah, so I'll come back to this, but on the point of Dasi and we getting flummoxed, but I remember, since you were mentioning about the dial and the needle going around, that time I recall that we were required to ask the aircraft to transmit longer for it to get a lock. Otherwise, if the transmissions were shorter, the needle would hunt. So for a needle to get a little closer to the bearing, we would request the pilot to transmit for a longer duration, and the guy would press the PTT. And then the needle would somewhere show the indication. Coming to the bit of QGH, any fond memories of a QGH or something which you recall?
This US compass always used to terrify me. Just to know which direction that guy was going, because you never knew. You had to make him turn and then follow the homings and the bearings or whatever, and see whether it is increasing or decreasing, and then tell him to roll out at the correct time. Remember?
Yeah.
I can't even think that we are talking about it 50 years later, almost half a century later.
And I'm sure you would also remember that in order to flummox the controller, the examiner would ask the aircraft to come overhead and do it.
I'm not sure about that.
Because the bearings would change very fast.
And pretty dicey. But then later on, when the radar came, and it made things much more easy. And I used to love radar controlling. I really liked it, loved it, and had a lot of satisfaction working on the radar.
Why was that so? Why radar? What was the reason for special love for radar?
No, it was far more easy, from that thing where you're just imagining things where these aircraft are. Here you have a blip, even though it was a primary radar.
Yes.
But I underwent my training, both my surveillance radar, SRE, and as well as my precision radar in CATC Allahabad. And it was good working with the civilians. Their way of working was entirely different. But later on, I came to do the same thing when I ended up as CI at Court, and we had a radar simulator. So, but then the radar controlling was good. It showed us, at least in exact terms, where the aircraft was, etc. But then, even then, I think our minds had to do a lot of work. Part of our brain was phenomenal those days, because every single thing, all those blips, what heading you gave, what altitude he was, everything had to be in your brain. Even the call signs, because they were just multiple blips all over the place. And we did have quite a lot of flying later on, wherever I was.
So, see, you were talking about the DASI, the Directorate of Air Staff Inspection, and the inspectors, and we were talking about the QGH. There was another thing on which the ATCO was often tested, and that was the crash firefighting and rescue. If I'm not wrong, you were particularly very interested, and you had mastered the subject, so-called CFFR. So, any fond memories from those days, and why crash firefighting was your favorite subject, and any instances that you would like to share from those days?
Of course, plenty. Yeah, so I did my crash firefighting course from DIFR Delhi when I was in Delhi. Yeah, mostly I remember working with the Tatra crash tenders. And my biggest nightmare would be and happened. I think it was in Hindal or in Halwara that we had an aircraft lined up for takeoff. A pilot who opened, he engaged his reed, and the aircraft caught fire. And we tried to operate the crash tender, and only water gushed out, So it was quite a terrifying moment when only water came out, and we had to manually open the foam valve. But situations which were there. But then, yes, I used to get underneath the crash tender and check out all those things. So I wasn't any great expert at it, but then certainly I used to dirty my hands and soil my hands looking at the crash tender. So I came to know a little bit more than many of the other people. Other incident was where another similar thing was there, and this aircraft was about to take off for Sidok Khas range in Harwara, and it was armed with missiles or rockets, something like that. And when the aircraft caught fire, we landed up there and we were fighting horrific thing was we were in front of the aircraft, in front of the pods, the rocket pods, etc., where the fire was, and we were fighting the fire there, not knowing that this was absolutely an armed aircraft, and of course we did manage to put off the fire, etc. For that we earned a pat on the back from the AOC, but
things like that happen. But coming to the crash firefighting crew, since the accidents and incidents are rare and they happen once in a while, the crew and the equipment, the crash tenders, have to be primed to move at short notice and deliver what they are supposed to deliver in the response time. Now, how do you ensure that your crew is up to date, your crash tenders are serviceable? So
that this is what I find people must understand, that a human being is there in the crash bay. Most of the time, nothing happens. Well, I don't know whether he's playing carom board there, but he's certainly doing nothing much. And when your brain, everything is almost at a activity of your brain, your body, etc., is almost next to, if I call it, zero. Okay. And then when you press that crash bell, this man and the machine is supposed to both operate within seconds at 100% efficiency. That requires a lot of training.
Like they say that every rule is written in blood because somebody has paid a price for it earlier. So we try to ensure that the systems, equipment, and the manpower, they are primed to deliver what they're supposed to deliver. So I think training and regular, simulations and practices are one of the ways. But ultimately, it is the man behind the machine, whether it is in the air or on the ground, which has to deliver. So that brings me back to the question that, as compared to a civilian controller, an air traffic controller in the Air Force is required to perform many roles. It's not just the controlling role; it is also the works on the runway, the crash firefighting, and so many other sundry duties. So, what do you think are some of the key attributes of a good controller?
Before I answer that, you asked me to, recollect something, a very, very important time, incident or something. One of the incidents which I'll never forget was when it was not related to aircraft flying, but it was related to crash firefighting. Was when we were in a party. I think it was obviously a Saturday or something like that. We were in the party in the mess, and when suddenly somebody whispered something to the AOC, and the AOC called me, and I was told that there was a major fire in Mullapur from Halwara. I think it was about 20 minutes or 30 minutes right? Major fire in Mullapur, and I was asked to go. So I went quickly down and rounded up my crash crew, crash tenders. I think we took 2 and took some AFSs along with us. And we could see as we were coming closer to Mullapur that it was a major fire because the whole skyline was lit up. It was orange,
Mm-hmm.
And we reached that place, and it was the militants that time. Mind you, we were in Alwara at that time, and militancy was
At its peak.
at a height. No?
Yeah.
So these militants had rocketed 2 massive ATF
Dumps. Yeah.
tanks,
Yeah.
huge ones.
Mm-hmm.
They had rocketed one tank, and that was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we reached, we used to try to put it off. We used to be successful to a certain extent, but the entire thing was so bloody hot, must have been so hot, that it used to just catch fire again. So we were there, me and my crash crew. I was the only officer there. And we were filling up from nearby and going back again to the thing, and this was near the railway station, if I'm not wrong. And we did this the entire night.
Mm-hmm.
The whole night we were there fighting the fire, going up and down, and later on some more crash tenders arrived from nearby places. I don't know from where, Bhatinda maybe, and so on. And then we continued fighting the fire the whole night. I thought I would die that night because the next tank also caught fire. So 2 tanks were ablaze with this huge amount of aviation fuel.
Yeah.
And the top ripped off. There was an explosion and the top ripped off and all that. So we continued fighting the fire over the entire night. And next morning I went home. I drove home. Some vehicle had come by that time. So I just about reached home and the AOC called me and said, okay, you change and get back. We'll go back to the site again. This fire lasted for about a week. There were 16 lakh liters of aviation fuel which was burning. People were so happy and thankful that they came, and they wanted to give the individuals things, but then they stopped. The entire Western Air Command fleet of crash tenders landed up there after 1 day or 2 days. It took a week for the fire to be not extinguished. What they did was they let it burn off. They let the entire thing burn off, and it took a week for the thing to be extinguished. And this was certainly one of my most memorable experience. This was in 1989. Yeah.
So I think that's a good example of the Air Force coming to the aid of civil administration.
Oh, absolutely. And we've done that many times. Being part of being a fire officer in most of the stations, I've certainly gone to many places.
Thank you, sir. And in fact, let me take you back to what we were discussing. And, whether it's being trained in the crash firefighting and rescue, or as a controller, or even looking after the projects on the runway, what are some of the key attributes do you think an air traffic controller should have?
I think what an ATC officer does certainly required, and that taught me a lot, was that you have to make decisions quickly, and they better be correct. You can't make... so your decision-making ability has to be quick. You have to analyze the situation correctly. Okay? You have to think quickly, and then you have to give a decision, and that decision better be correct, because you can't say sorry, So that sort of thing, when you start doing it over and over again, that also helps you later on in your life, and also perhaps, and when you're doing multiple things at the same time, perhaps that also trains your brain to, what do you call,
multitask.
Not be totally only one track minded. You can correlate different issues at the same time. So that I think is an attribute to which air traffic controllers are trained, and their job makes them do. Whether you like
handling multiple inputs and then taking a quick decision. Because there have been cases I recall wherein while you're handling the RT, You have a call from the runway controller. There's somebody calling from maybe the crew is online. There's a flight commander. There's a met officer. There's so many multiple communication channels, and you keep getting inputs. And then based on those inputs, you have to take a quick decision. So
Not only that,
yeah.
the air traffic situation itself is always so dynamic and fluid and
Yes.
quick. No? So
Yeah.
your brain has to keep up with that also, no, all the time. It has to be one step ahead. You cannot be behind. You have to anticipate these things before a situation develops, no? So therefore, and the way the speed at which the aircraft fly, etc. You to that extent, I think the air traffic controller's job is again understated all over the place, under recognized all over the place, but that is the aspect that I have.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. I would now move on to another aspect that is about the controller pilot rapport. And I think besides the ATC team, it's the flying squadrons, the pilots and the controllers, their camaraderie, the professionalism and the rapport goes a long way in ensuring a safe flying environment. So any fond memories or any incident or emergency that you recall that you handled, which actually saved the day, lives and
Yes, any air traffic controller who's been in having spent as much time as we all did, would have many instances where you always had some sort of a thing.
which is the uppermost one in your mind? Do you recall?
I have several where
Can you just narrate one of them?
One thing which you're talking about pilot and controller rapport. One thing which again I'm not blowing. I'm cool to blow my trumpet these days. I mean, but but I recollect CEO of a helicopter unit telling me, I don't know whether it was Awara, Ashimara, or where it was, but telling me, when I hear your voice, I put away my map, which was absolute, it sent me a lot of, gave me a lot of gum. Okay.
I think that's
And
an
something
aha
similar
moment
also
for any
happened with
controller.
the late Wing Commander, Valiant's squadron commander in Angora.
Yeah.
That's where he had got up on a dune check or something like that, and he was in lousy cloud, pretty horrible cloud. And then I just told him, gave him some headings to get out of that thing. And he came back and he was really good. And of course, there were many instances where, we were bringing down aircraft on PAR and really lousy weather. And the Boeing chaps, we used to land up in the ATC and say, thank you so much, you helped us. And I'm amazed, Mahesh, that those days in the precision approach radar, we were using this Tesla equipment, if I'm not wrong, this RP3F.
Yes.
That was the type of equipment that we were using. And our minima was so much lower than the equipment, than the minima which is now prevalent in Bagdogra.
What are the stories you want to hear?
Absolutely. The weather used to be absolutely pathetic when we used to get these guys in. And many times these pilots used to come to the air traffic control and then thank us saying, without your help, we wouldn't have made it. And you just have to be a true professional. And respect would come to you, just like that CEO of the helicopter unit said, I can put away my mic when I hear your voice, which is amazing, which is scary also, to think
So
that
there's
somebody
no shortcut to earning respect. It's through the professional route. And
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
has to be.
That's what I used to tell all my youngsters who are, of course, hot-blooded. So they used to say, this guy just told me this on RT and all. Forget it, yeah. Let's school it. I mean, just be a professional. That's all.
Yeah, thanks for narrating. These inputs are very important. So as we inch towards the end of this podcast, last few questions. What would you advise the youngsters in the Air Force today?
People used to hang around and every Saturday or something. And that used to bring quite a bit of camaraderie. And people were closer. I think now that sort of thing has become less, because that is required in any sort of job that we are in, especially in the Air Force.
Yeah,
Where
because lately people have become such screen suckers. There's a screen everywhere, either television or a mobile or a tab.
Yeah, I think the mobile has contributed
And
a
of
lot.
course, in the ATC, you have radar. So I think beyond the screen, the technology, that human element is very, very important too.
Absolutely. That is one thing we should be able to, work with each other to that extent. So that, I think that must go up. But I also like to tell them that what I've been telling you now, our job is very, very, job which demands a lot. And I don't think you can be a shammer when you have blood, somebody else's blood in your hands. I mean, that realization should be there with any air traffic controller. Like, and as far as air traffic control and air crash rescue and all, you don't have a second chance. You can't say sorry after you.
So minimas are not to be breached.
Yeah. So
Thank you for sharing those thoughts, sir. Any incident that you recall, any tradition or anything that you recall?
There must have been many, but then
Humor in uniform.
Ago. So when I was in Paro, there was suddenly a requirement for Bhutanese government there were some tourists who were stuck up because of abnormal snowfall. It was a very, very laid back sort of place, those days. One Dornier flight used to creep in. The runway was very, very small. The tarmac was equally small. And one helicopter used to land up from somewhere in Hashibara, etc. So anyway, what happened was that suddenly 3 helicopters landed up there for this guy's event. And all the drums of ATF that we had finished. So I didn't know what to do, and one of the pilots suggested, why don't you borrow from Thukel?
Okay.
So you can't borrow to ATF, know. So I just borrowed, I just took a chance on my own, took a decision, which I was saying, this is decision making in the wrong sense. You shouldn't be doing all this. But anyway, I borrowed a whole lot of ATF, and the helicopters flew, and we got all these guys out. And we used to have this stupid pump, which again I remembered the name of, thanks to you. It was called a Sudan pump. I don't know why. So we pumped. When I told this to my coup, Captain Pandit, I think he was. He nearly blew his top off, and but everything was okay, because everything that ends well is okay.
True.
It wasn't a humorous incident, but then it was something which, it just happened. We just had to take it. But we rescued people.
I know that you stay at a very salubrious place. You're settled in Kalimpong. And what keeps you busy these days? Very quickly.
Oh, lots. I'm so busy, I can't even tell you. In fact, I left the Air Force when I was 47 years old, and I was mad to leave the Air Force. And now I find that all the people whom I taught, even I was in Hatcoat as the CI, even those guys have retired. My heartfelt thanks to the Air Force for making me what I am, for everything that I have.
Thank you.
Certainly, you only come to know, I keep telling my youngsters when I come across them, whether in the Army or the Air Force, we did a share of cribbing. But it is only when you come out that you realize how good the service is, Yeah. And hats off to the Air Force, hats off to the air traffic control for allowing me to develop in that way. And hats off to all my seniors, Dinesh Mukundan, to name one person, and so many others, who guided me, put me through, and we all were doing pretty much well when I left the Air Force. So I thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And that's such a lovely thought that you just now shared with us, how Air Force impacted you and shaped you.
Without a doubt. And even my wife says so.
Such lovely thought. Really inspiring. Once again, thank you so much for being on this show, on this podcast.
So thank you for making me go back to those days where we were doing QDM and QT and AD210C and all that. Which I totally
That was
forgot.
the idea. That was the idea, sir.
Thank you so much.
Hope to see you in Kalimpong soon.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into TowerTales, the ATC podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and had a first-hand peek into the incredible work and life of yet another veteran air traffic controller. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to my channel on YouTube, leave a review, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. This podcast is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Your feedback will help me bring you more of the content you love. Join me after a fortnight for yet another engaging discussion with a veteran air traffic controller. Until then, this is Mahesh Sharma, your host, signing off for now. Safe travels and goodbye.
019er, 2 miles north